G'day. I want to give you an Easter story you can do with your kids on Good Friday, or an activity. You can choose which way you do it. If you do it as a story, you cut the bits out and stick them on a wall, a window, or something that you either got to use sticky tape or blue tack. If you want to do it as an activity with your kids, then you give each of them a sheet of paper and they copy what you do and then they glue it onto another bit of paper. I hope you can imagine what that works out like. Either way you can do it. I'll do it for you as a story so that you can see it. I think it's going to work here. But it's based on Luke's Gospel. I tend to just make up the words as I go along. I kind of got an idea what the story is going to go, and I just say it as I go. But if you're doing it with your kids, feel free to write it out if that helps you to get the details right. But otherwise, just tell the story. Pray as you do it with them, but also then just have fun with them, because it's a little activity. It's a fun way of, it can be a meaningful way of doing the Easter story with your kids. It's based on Luke, so I want to get that story in my head, so I'll read that first. Luke chapter 23, verses 32 to 40-something. Two others, criminals, were also led away to be executed with him. When they arrived at the place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, one on the right and one on the left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, because they do not know what they're doing." And they divided his clothes and cast lots. The people stood watching, and even the soldiers, the leaders, kept scoffing. He saved others, then let him save himself. This is God's Messiah, the chosen one. The soldiers also mocked him. They came offering him sour wine and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." An inscription was above him, "This is the King of the Jews." Then one of the criminals hanging there began to yell insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other one answered, rebuking him, "Don't you even fear God, since you are undergoing the same punishment? We are punished justly because we're getting back what we deserve for the thing we did, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And he said to him, "I assure you, today you'll be with me in paradise." So that's the story. What you're going to need is a piece of paper, a pair of scissors, a pen or a Sharpie or a texter, and then either sticky tape or blue tack. And so you just start out, kids, do you reckon I can tell you the Easter story with a piece of paper? I'm going to use this piece of paper to tell you the Easter story with 3 folds and 1 cut. Let me show you how to do it. First is you're going to fold it down. You fold one edge down along, one short edge down along a long edge to make along a corner to make it like that, and then you fold that one down as if you were. It looks a bit like a paper plane fold now. Some paper planes start that way. You fold that top sharp corner down to the other one, and you've got like that. And then you're going to fold it 2 more times. Did I say 3 folds? That's 1, 2, 3, 4 folds. Fold it in half once. Mine's all wonky because I'm doing it in the air. It is easy to do it on a desk. And then fold it in half again. 4 folds and 1 cut. Now what I'm going to do is cut it right up the middle. When I do that, I'll get a number of different pieces. I'm going to let them fall out all on my stand here. And then I pull the pieces out and they make different things. So what you're going to get is one big cross. So I probably should have got the sticky tape ready beforehand. Let's say, and then you just start telling the story. So the Bible tells us that when Jesus was crucified, he was hung up on a cross, which is how they used to kill criminals back then. When he was crucified, there was also some more bits to the story. There was other criminals crucified. One on his left, and you just match those up so they make a cross. And there's another one of them there, and one on his right. So even though Jesus had done nothing wrong, he was crucified between 2 criminals. And you can see how, just that bit of paper, you've got the basics of the story here. Jesus was crucified between 2 criminals. What they did is they got a sign and stuck it on the top of the cross that said, Jesus is the King of the Jews. Some of Jesus' disciples believed that he was the King of the Jews, and you can write king on that if you want, but others didn't believe, and so the soldiers started mocking Jesus, and they were bowing down saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." People were saying, "Save yourself if you're the King of the Jews." And one of the criminals, he also started to mock Jesus. And he was saying to Jesus, "If you're the King of the Jews, why don't you save yourself and us?" Because they couldn't imagine that a king would die on a cross. But while he was abusing Jesus and yelling out insults and being mean, the other guy, who was a criminal, dying on the cross, he said, "Hey, why don't you be quiet? Don't you realise we're all dying? But the difference is you and I both deserve this. We're criminals. We've done something wrong. But this guy has done nothing wrong." And then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Well, Jesus said the most amazing thing next. Jesus said, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." Now that's an incredible thing for him to say, because how can a criminal who admitted that he deserved to die, like I don't know whether he was a murderer or was he like a violent criminal or something, that what had he done to deserve death? But he knew he deserved death, but Jesus said he would go to paradise with Jesus that very day. And this is how that happens, because what we know from the Bible is that every single person has sin in their heart. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on these this bit of paper I've got here, the last two of the last three left, a big black mark. Can you see that big black mark I've drawn there? That represents our sin. And each one of us has got sin that God sees when he looks at us. But when this man put his trust in Jesus, Jesus took his sin away from him. And Jesus died on the cross carrying his sin. That's why Jesus died. So the Roman soldiers later on came with a spear to check that Jesus was dead, and he was already dead. They didn't need to break his knees, but they stuck a spear into his side to make sure he was dead. And when Jesus died, he took all that man's sin to himself. And so that's how he could say to him, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." And that's actually a promise that the Bible gives to everybody who follows Jesus. If you trust Jesus, then your sin will be given to him, and he will take that sin into the grave, and it's gone. And your sin is gone, and you can be friends with God. You'll go to paradise with Jesus and with everybody else who trusts in Jesus. That's the good news of Easter. That's why we call it Friday that Jesus died. That's why we call it Good Friday. So you can see that's a fairly straightforward talk. If you've got kind of the basics of that Luke's Bible reading in your head, then all these pieces as they fall out, you've just got to remember one big cross falls out. Then two pieces make a cross. Then these two bits that are same, you fold the flap down, it becomes a label. You leave the flap folded up and it's a spear. And then you've just got two little squares that you scribble on for sin. And so the story kind of tells itself with those bits of paper. It's really quite clever. The person who showed it to us, I'm really thankful that they showed us. But you can do that with your kids as like a story like this. Or if you're all sitting around a table, I find it helpful if the bit of paper that you're cutting up is slightly smaller than the bit of paper you're gluing onto. But you can just glue it onto the bit of paper like that, and then the kids have actually got their own little diagram, and they can kind of hang on to that for a little while. Anyway, that's one kids talk, an Easter talk that you could do for your kids later on today, over Good Friday or sometime over this weekend. Just you helping your kids to understand what God has done for us and how wonderful it is this time of year to remember God's forgiveness for us. God bless you with you as you look at that.